This is Terrence Banks with Information Age Financial Solutions coming to you from reading a report from SRS Rocco Report. The collapse has arrived. Dimming bubble 3. And I've got a report on this because, this guy, he is one of the foremost people talking about the conception of energy and money and debt. And he's the one who distinctly puts that together to kind of put all those things in perspective, because nothing, and I mean nothing, exists out of energy. And so that's why it's so important that we understand the relationship between energy and the things that we do, because as a society in whole, we only grow by energy. And I came across an article from SRS Rocco Report. Get familiar with that. This website is fantastic, again, especially in terms of precious metals and energy. And energy is everything that we need to exist. And the collapse has arrived, diminishing bubble 3. And this shows here that there's 3 different articles that come in this. But I'm just going to highlight some of the content of this one because it's just so well done and it explains it. Due to my high and mighty position as a global collapse pundit, I'm often asked the question, when precisely will the collapse arrive? People can feel that there's a collapse coming, but no one can really kind of give a date, even though everything around you can show that something is changing, especially if you've been paying attention outside of the United States, because the United States, we're constantly fed in terms of entertainment, and since we're the reserve currency of the world, we tend to forget how other people are living outside that. We only make a small population out there, but we have such unprecedented in terms of wealth and resources because of our reserve status with the dollar. Even our poorest here have the benefits of just benefiting from that in terms of having social, which whether it be welfare or SNAP programs or any kind of government assistance to continue to keep our existence going, not like any other countries. But I kind of digress here, but I want to go back to what the article was talking about, the collapse has arrived. The people who ask me in this question also come from the first world countries. They are also reasonably well off with a computer and internet connection, running water, and enough food to eat. Proves my point right here. He's talking about the first world countries, and the United States stands at the top. The diner doesn't get many readers from the underclass even here in America, much less from the global underclass in places like Nigeria, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. The fact is that far more than half of the world population collapses in full swing and well underway. Read that again. The fact is that more than half of the world population collapses in full swing and well underway. 2 key bellwethers of where collapse is now are the areas of electricity and food. Electricity, and here go energy and food, 2 of the things that you need. And look at this right here. He shows a chart from the 1930s and where the blackouts were going on in that point. Again, I encourage you to read that, get accustomed to SRS Rocco, because I'm pointing a lot more stuff as time goes on from his particular website. The collapse has arrived. So going in here, in his seminal 1996 paper, The Oddville Theory, Sliding Towards a Post-Industrial Stone Age, Richard Duncan mapped out the trajectory of where we would be as the years passed and fossil fuels became more difficult and expensive to mine up. Besides powering all our cars and trucks for happy motoring and just-in-time delivery, the main thing our first world lifestyle requires is electricity, and lots of it on demand 24/7. That's it right there. Although electricity can be produced in some renewable ways that don't depend on a lot of fossil fuel energy, at least directly, most of the global supply of electric power comes from the coal and natural gas. Other 2, natural gas is slightly cleaner, but either way, when you burn them, CO2 goes up in the atmosphere. This, of course, is a problem climatically, but you may have even a bigger problem socially and politically if you aren't burning them. Everything in the society as it has been constructed since Edison invented the light bulb in 1879 has been dependent on electricity to function. Worth saying again. Everything in the society as it has been constructed since Edison invented the light bulb in 1879 has been dependent on electricity to function. We cannot get out of electricity, and electricity is a form of energy. It's our main source, which comes from fossil fuels, which is another thing from oil in that process. Now, if all the toys like lights, refrigerators, big screen TVs, etc. have been kept to just a few small countries and the rest of the world lived a simple subsistence farming lifestyle, the lucky few with the toys probably could have kept the juice flowing a lot longer. Unfortunately, However, once exposed to all the great toys, everybody wanted them. And again, we're not talking enough about that. And that's what I love about SRS Rocco Reports. He explains the energy basis and how it's having a diminishing return. And since we live on a surplus energy, that's how we get, not the energy we put in to get out the output. The surplus energy is what we live on to create our lifestyle. That's why we've been taking on so much more debt to find those energy sources and to keep this thing going on as far as it is. Because again, you have an economic growth model based on a finite earth, and it has to continuously have that exponential functioning. Let's go on. The industrialists also salivated over all the profit we made selling the toys to everyone. So everybody everywhere needed a grid, which the industrialists and the associated bankers extended credit for backward nation states all over the globe to build their own power plants and string their own wires. Now everybody in the country could have a light bulb to see by hand, and a fridge to keep the food cold. More than that, the electricity also went back to power water pumping stations and sewer treatment plants. So you could pack the big shitties with even more people who still more electricity. I like the way you put that. This went all over the globe today. There isn't a major city or even a medium-sized town anywhere on the globe that isn't wired for electricity. Although many places that are now no longer have enough money to keep the juice flowing. That's where the problem comes in. Although many places that are now no longer have enough money to keep the juice flowing. Where's electricity going off first? Obviously, in the poorest and most war-torn countries across the Middle East and Africa. These days, from Egypt to Tunisia, if they get 2 hours of electricity a day, they are doing good. Could you imagine that? And we just take this stuff for granted so much because I'm saying for myself, I live in the United States. Electricity goes out one time because of, it was a storm or something like that. We complain about it once anything has a couple of hours. They're happy in the Middle East and Africa just to get 2 hours if they're doing it on a good day. Public fury over rampant outages has sparked protests in January in one of the largest demonstrations since Hamas took control in Gaza. A decade ago, 10,000 Palestinians, angered by the lack of power during a frigid winter, hurled stones and set tires ablaze outside the electricity company. Iraq has the world's 5th largest oil reserves, but during the past 2 years, repeated anti-government demonstrations have erupted over blackouts that are rarely announced in advance and are of indefinite duration. It's one issue that unites fractious Sunnists in the West. Shiites in the arid South and Kurds in the mountains north. In the midst of Yemen's complex war, hundreds dared to take streets of Aden in February to protest prolonged outages. In Syria, supporters of President Bashar al-Assad in Latakia, the dynasty's main stronghold, who had remained loyal for 6 years to the civil war, drew the line over electricity. They staged a protest in January over a cutback to only 1 hour of power a day. Now, I'm going to skip down here a little bit. Pay attention to this picture here. But now you note that at the end of the third paragraph there, the journalist implies that a big part of the problem is political corruption. But it's really not. It's simply a lack of money. These countries at one time were all exporters, although not on the scale of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, as their own supplies of oil depleted. They have become oil importers. Could you imagine that? They were once time. These countries at one time were oil exporters. Now they become oil importers. Except they neither have a sufficient mercantile model running to bring enough forex to buy oil. Now, if people are not familiar with forex, which traded on the market, it's the largest trading platform ever. And they can't get credit from the international banking cartel to keep buying. Third world countries are being cut off from the credit lifeline, unlike the core countries at the center of credit creation like Britain, Germany, and FSOA. All these first world countries are just as bad financial debt as the MENA countries. The only difference is they still can get credit and run the deficit even higher. I mentioned just before about credit establishes how we exist in that point, and because of the diminishing return of energy, you need even more credit to continually to pump things out. And these countries are not access to get that, so that's the reason why the third world countries, they've been led to believe, even though they were once oil exporters, are now having the trouble of keeping the energy going. And look at this, Britain, Germany, and the FSOA. I'm not sure what the FSOA stands for in this place. I'm thinking it's Financial Place of America, but I don't want to jump to conclusions there. But the point is that this is extremely important. Beyond the credit issue is the war problem. As the countries run out of money, more people become unemployed, businesses go bankrupt, tax collection drops off the map, and government employees are laid off too. It's a classic deflationary spiral from printing more money doesn't solve, since the notes become increasingly worthless. Again, we have the numbers we have in the United States are just staggering. We're the largest debtor nation in history. But because we have that reserve currency, we're able to print, and then we have the war. I mean, we have the war tactics because we have the largest military, and we spend the most into that. That keeps us from experiencing what many other people outside the United States have: lack of energy, lack of and even having massive amount of resources. They can't do anything about it to keep things going because they don't have that luxury of being a reserve currency or actually having the access to credit like that. The warfare on these growing nations has knock-on effects for the first world nations still try to extract energy from some of these places. To keep the oil flowing outward, they have to run very expensive military operations to at least maintain enough order that oil pipelines aren't sabotaged on a daily basis. The cost of operations keeps going up, but the amount of money that they can charge the customers for the oil inside their own countries does not keep going up. Right now, they've hit a ceiling around $50 a barrel for what they can charge for the oil. And for the most part, this is not a profit-making price. The other major problem now serving is the food distribution problem, food and energy. And again, this is hitting the African countries first and hardest. It's a combination problem of climate change, population overshoot, and the warfare which results from those issues. Currently, UN lists 4 countries in extreme danger of famine in the coming year: Nigeria, Sudan, Somalia, and Yemen. They estimate currently over 20 million people are at extreme risk, and I'll bet these numbers are a good deal higher than that. Could you imagine that 20 million people at extreme risk are just dying from not having access to food? We live in some perilous times now, and we got to stop taking things for granted. And this is just showing you here that eventually this energy problem will be facing here. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Now, I'm going to end this excerpt with this pointed here. This is the thing for relatively comfortable readers of the Doomsday Guide in the First World BA. It seems to be continuing onward. If you are a bit poorer than you were last year, 24/7 electricity is still available from the grid with the only occasional interruptions. Gas is still available at the pump, and if you're employed, you probably can afford to buy it. Although you need to be more careful about how much you drive around unless you are a 1%er. The rich are still lining up to buy EVs from Elon Musk, even though having a grid to support all electric transportation is out of the question. The current grid can't be maintained, and upgrading to handle that much throughput, which would take thicker cables all across the network. People carry on as though this would go on forever. And that's where the biggest thing comes in. People carry on as this will go on forever. Scientists and engineers will solve all problems with some magical new device. IOW. They believe in Skittle shitting unicorns. That's not going to happen. Though you're so back to the question of how long will it take your neighborhood in UK or Germany or the financial state of America to look like to say Egypt today. Well, if you go back in time a decade in Egypt 2007, we're still looking pretty. So he's given a 10-year time frame. Peachy over there, especially with tourist traps like Cairo. Terrorism wasn't a huge problem, and the government of Hussein Mubarak appeared stable. A decade later, today, Egypt is basically a failed state, only doing marginally better than places like Somalia and Sudan. The only reason they're doing as well as they are is because they are an important strategic location in the Suez Canal, and as such, get support from the FSOA military. So what a good wag here for how long it will take for the collapse level in the first world countries to reach the level of Egypt as today is about a decade. So in 10 years, it could be a little slower, it could be a little longer. But then, of course, Egypt will be even in worse shape. Over the next decade, the families will spread and people will die in numbers far exceeding 20 million to occur over the next year. After a while, it's unlikely we'll get much news about this, and people here won't care much about what they do here. They will have their own problems. He's mentioning here, this is coming. He gave it about 10 years. That's what he was saying about that. So even he lends it at that. Lastly, people need to realize collapse does not take place in a day, week, month, or year. It takes place over a period of time. It's worth repeating again. Lastly, people need to realize collapse does not take place in a day, week, month, or year. It takes place over a period of time. The folks at Doomsday Diner are already making a case that has arrived. It's just taking time to reach the more affluent. This is Terrence Banks with Information Age Financial Solutions. If you're not concerned, you better start getting concerned. Start preparing, getting some preparations done for the future that's coming. 5 to 10 years is just right around the corner, and time goes a lot faster these days. Until my next video, I'm out.